He was reading the Bible, but he kept putting in like parts of Berserk. So every now, like every few pages, he'd get a couple pages of Berserk.
Let's start it up. I'm Drew.
Hey, I'm Josh. Welcome to Bastard Sword.
So we called an emergency meeting because I am attempting to get my sleep schedule in order, and Father Miyazaki is not letting that happen.
No, he is not. We are blessed with the graciousness of a new Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree trailer, and now we have a full-fledged story, cinematic, lore-heavy trailer to dissect and look at. So we're going to try to pick it apart and see if we can make any determinations about what's going on.
Attempt to make some sense of it. I'm going to go on record as I'm just throwing out my prediction that no, we are not going to make any sense whatsoever of it.
I would say for every answer this trailer suggests, it creates way more questions and kind of distorts maybe what the fan base is thinking about where the story stands and how things work and where people come from, particularly America, maybe the demigods.
Yeah, all we really know, we are fully in the Miquella and Mesmer zone.
Yeah, we're in the America, Mesmer, Miquella trifecta.
Yes, we are very holy trifecta pilled at this point. So you want to jump into it? We're just going to kind of go through the trailer, I think, in more or less real time, stop and give some reactions and discussion on it, and then just kind of circle back around with some final thoughts and see what sense we can make of it.
Yeah, let's start with the seduction and the betrayal.
Before that, actually, the trailer initially opens up with Peggy 16, which I'm not entirely sure, but I think even FromSoft is sneaking in digs at Drake.
That fuck 'em up.
Oh shit. Yeah, let's just talk about this opening shot. It is one of the most gruesome things I've seen in a game trailer ever, and I didn't know that you could make content like this. What are your thoughts on this opening shot?
It's real gross.
Yeah, it is straight up birthing videos. We start with like a hand and we see a bracelet that seems to be Marika's, and it's reaching into this bloody vaginal opening that seems to be coming out of the ground. She pulls out a strand of blonde hair, and then we get the words,
"The seduction and the betrayal."
And the ground is also just glistening flesh.
So the next shot like opens up with Marika walking out of this valley of death. It's incredibly gruesome and bloody and way more gory than I expected this to go. I don't really understand where this body or corpse that's being pulled from is, because the next thing we see is she just walks out of that area.
She kind of walks out of the area and then holds up what I suppose is that golden hair to the sky in the middle of this opening of just limbs. You just see hands and arms reaching inwards as a big gust of wind starts like blowing from inside the opening, and it forms the hair into the shape of a rune arc.
And this is definitely Marika because, I mean, she's got the armbands and the bracelets, the blonde hair. We don't really get to see much of her form besides like her skirt or dress that's kind of blowing too. My take on this is like it is like their Numen hell. I don't know if it's tied to another Erdtree. It kind of looks like the opening in the original Erdtree that we open in the main game.
This opening is in something that loosely resembles the shape of a tree trunk, but it's built entirely out of corpses. It's big New Londo ruins when the water drains energy. Just piles and piles of hundreds upon hundreds of desiccated, wet, gross old corpses forming this giant pillar that's separating, like Moses parting the sea.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to... The Red Sea is being parted. And we don't see the top. With the original Erdtree opening, we can see like the path of it. The opening is distinct. And here it just kind of keeps going up toward the sky. It's very reminiscent of like the Dante's Inferno depictions of hell, with like piles of bodies and just covered in blood and grotesqueness. But I mean, it's obviously like really heavy on Rykard and everything that he was doing. It has that energy of the blasphemous blade. Like everything is just shiny with blood and still like animated a little bit.
Oh yeah, Rykards will look at this and just think, hell yeah.
Yeah, Rykards love this shit. If you are a man inside a giant snake, you're gonna be so fucking down for this.
I mean, it's again very maternally shaped. We'll go with that. That's a good description, right?
That's as much as you can say.
It's worth saying as we describe these things, they all look in technical terms sick as fuck.
If you're picturing this image and you're like, that doesn't look sick as fuck, just like imagine if it was, and then that you'll have a clear picture of what's going on. I was gonna say, with this whole scene of the bodies and everything pulling back, they aren't animated in the way that Rykard's like blasphemous stuff is, but I am wondering if this has something to do. It seems to be asserted from just this one little scene, and it's kind of out of context from the rest of the trailer. But I feel like America has done something bad and has taken with that hair that's obviously not hers. I don't know if it's intended to say it was Miquella's or, it's something else. Like, I think this is sort of the hell of the Numens. This is where they go to die and maybe be reborn in the same way that we see the Tarnished, like being reborn and going into the lands between in the beginning of the game and like the illustrated cinematic. I don't know. I'm trying to form some kind of theory here that America has done something bad to possibly escape hell or change the fate of hell by possibly like removing the state of death and all that in an effort to rise up as the Numen. Obviously, that leads into the rest of the trailer and where Mesmer stands and all this. But it just makes me wonder if maybe like the way the demigods and the Numen are born, like they have a darker context than what we imagined.
What I wonder, and I don't know how this plays into that, is how this golden hair that is presumably Miquella's ends up in this birth canal inside the horrible meat valley, as you so succinctly put it in the notes. What leads to that being there for America to go and recover it and I guess use it to escape or somehow bring some of this like hellish blasphemy world into the greater lands between or whatever portion of the world we end up being in?
Right. So like chronologically, if we think about like this cycle of birth, it wouldn't make sense, right? So if we consider that Miquella just has children in the normal way, then obviously this theory goes down the wrong path. But if maybe like demigods or Numen or this line of beings, if they exist in like some sort of damnation or hell when they die, that this is kind of like where they end up. And maybe that's why there's so much focus with Moog and the Palace of Blood and that connection to Miquella and bringing this all back to Mesmer and blasphemy and all these things that we don't really understand in the lore fully. Like we have an idea of how they work, but they might be like tied to these beings in a very particular way. I think that this is going to shift the way we think about the demigods. Honestly, I just think it's got to make, that like America is the mother of the Golden Order and perhaps like rebirthing the Numen, but they are not technically like just her birth children.
Yeah, it's almost like the world itself is birthing these gods.
Yeah, exactly. And that it makes me wonder too, like we have this distinction with the Numen and the Tarnished and like their role and sort of hierarchy, but maybe they're more akin to like normal humans, that they end up in this like bloody, grotesque hell. and they supplant that. They basically, through whatever America does, they reach a higher spot on the hierarchy and like overthrow the old order of lords, whether that be like dragons or whatever preceded like the Crucible era stuff.
Okay. Well, do you want to move along in the trailer?
I got one more thing to lay on you.
All right, we got one more thing.
It's a Genesis theory. You know, we've been seeing America depicted in this sort of Jesus crucifixion type way, but I'm starting to think that maybe Miquella is actually our Jesus type character and is like the upcoming god, like the ascended deity, so to speak. So I think that actually puts America and Radagon in this sort of like Adam Eve paradox, where it's the opposite in the Bible. You know, Eve is born from Adam's rib or what have you. And in this case, it's like Radagon was actually born from America. And that ties into the serpent, the tree, the betrayal, all the things that America was supposed to do. And she took her own path to raise herself in the hierarchy of gods and lords and all that.
She got power hungry, she got knowledge hungry, and she wanted the shit for herself, and didn't go well for everyone.
And who better to offer that than a serpent Luciferian character that like is literally like he's the serpent from Genesis, and he's also Lucifer, Lord of the Underworld type stuff. So I think that like is allegorically kind of what's being pushed here.
Do you think this is a situation where, so Miyazaki famously read like Lord of the Rings and those sort of books when he was younger, but didn't fully understand English, so he would just kind of fill in the gaps, and that led to a lot of the odd, fucked up designs from the Souls series. Do you think this is, he found a Bible and that's his interpretation of that?
Yeah, he was reading the Bible, but he kept putting in like parts of Berserk. So every now, like every few pages, he'd get a couple pages of Berserk, and then he'd move on to like Revelations, but you know, it'd have some like crazy guts action in there too, just to keep him interested. Yeah, definitely.
So we move on from the hellish Flesh Valley monstrosity into the nice, comforting, warm tones of a city being royally fucked up, completely engulfed in flames, being stomped through by these giant caged furnace monsters. These things were shown in the first gameplay reveal trailer, and we pan down to see an entire army just wreaking havoc on this city.
I mean, it's just straight up fire and chaos. And yeah, we see his soldiers, we see some brutality, the golem wicker basket enemies, which have been analyzed, that seem to be full of like burning bodies, but are still moving and like attacking people and stuff like that, which I think is like another weird there's something with blasphemy in like animating piles of corpses to do your bidding.
I wonder how those kind of tie into Alexander and the jars too, because that's kind of how they operate too. They're just a little less metal.
That is a good point. Yeah, the jars are just like full of corpses and meat, basically. And that's how these seem to be operating too. And then, you know, we get this really cool shot of Mesmer like over the city, just beckoning the havoc. And he's like moving like his little flame snakes around, which kind of reminds me of like the actual Snake game, like where you eat the apples.
Yeah.
Visually, it just like...
It does, or it almost looks like he's, what's his face from Guardians of the Galaxy controlling the like spear with his whistle.
Oh yeah, the spear whistle for sure. But then we get to see that the sort of Chinese parade dragon float enemy, obviously defending this like ancient city, and we get to see him like attack a guy and then go for Mesmer, but then he opens up the flame on him and then it cuts.
Very anime looking, menacingly facing down towards the ground, but looking up, just peeking through the brim of his helmet.
Yeah, it looks sick as fuck.
Yeah.
What I just noticed, I just scrubbed back a moment, and you actually see the guy's hands directing the like lion head, which I didn't think you could see that as detailed, but just for a moment, he like when he opens its jaws, you see its hands like puppeting it.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. And it seems to have omen horns. My next question is that who's impaled when we see it's hard to tell. It kind of looks like the dragon creatures are impaled as the fire is rising up.
Yeah, so it cuts over to this incredibly sick as fuck scene of these pillars like halberds sitting upright with a bunch of things impaled on them, which I can't tell if it's those kind of dragon type things, but they have these long flowing capes that are just sort of like billowing in the wind, and it looks so fucking good. Yeah, and it just kind of pans up from there to show this big city, towering castle type of thing being just kind of ripped apart from the top. Like there's some sort of gravity magic at play, kind of pulling them up into this dark Erdtree that the city is sitting below.
I was going to say that too. I just noticed that how it looks like it's not like it's burning or it's like ash. It's like the shadows are pulling it upward toward the tree as the sap is coming down.
And it makes me think that somehow or other the type of gravity magic that Radon had is in play here. And I know Miyazaki said he name dropped Radon as one of the bosses you have to beat to get into the DLC. And his whole deal was that he was incredibly powerful, had this gravity magic. He's the one that was keeping the stars held in place. So you kill him, and then some kind of chunk of rock or whatever, a meteor crashes and opens up a new pathway to one of the underground cities. But the way all of this stuff, the city is just being kind of ripped apart and dragged upwards towards this. It's like an Erdtree, but with the golden light inside just kind of peeking out from some cracks. Really looks like there is some of that fucky gravity magic in play.
You know, I don't know if this is intended to be like the sacrifice, because obviously what we get from Mesmer here is he is supplanting this ancient order civilization that seems to kind of have like some Nokron vibes, like when we see the shot of the city. Obviously it's not underground, it's still on the surface here. I kind of wonder if it's like taking something from it for some reason. I don't know. I have this theory that it's all fed by bodies and corpses anyways, like more souls, maybe more matter in general. It just wants more material to grow.
Right. It looks like, so this dark Erdtree, I'm just going to call it the dark Erdtree.
Yeah.
But it's got, like, even beyond the city, you can look, it's just got like debris, just chunks of matter floating all around it. And it kind of looks like they're almost orbiting it, or maybe even just like adding to it and growing its mass. Like it is just this all consuming thing.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to posit something here. If our theory works, so a lot of people are kind of talking about in the gameplay trailer how Mesmer refers to Marika as mother. And first of all, do you think that Mesmer is Marika's like descended child? Because I'm starting to think it's like the opposite. I'm starting to think that maybe that isn't the case at all. I think they're related, but I don't think that they're related in that way.
Right. It seems like they're painting Mesmer as kind of the puppet master. So it seems like Mesmer is kind of the one that is making most of this happen. Like he seems to be the most powerful entity, which doesn't necessarily mean he has to be their elder, but that's just kind of the impression I'm getting.
Yeah, I'm wondering now if maybe Mesmer was around before Marika, at least in this area or this state. Like we talked about, like sort of making a deal with the serpent. I think that Mesmer is fulfilling a role because as far as we can tell, he's faithful to the Golden Order. It seems to be suggested that way in his dialogue, but I think he's doing this as a favor for Marika to help her attain golden power, or, you know, to like establish the Golden Order rightfully. We're going to start with like the pagans and heretics, as you know, historically Christians have done. There's something really suggestive about this trade-off. And it seems like Mesmer gets to retain his status or his space and keep the the lands of shadow or whatever we're calling them at this point. He gets to maintain his lordship in that area, and all he has to do is destroy this ancient civilization. To what gain, we don't really understand. We don't really know. It could be like just the power of that golden tree sap coming down. Obviously, a lot of just mechanical stuff in Elden Ring is tied to that. So I'm not really sure.
Yeah, just some kind of jealousy power play by America. So she kind of makes this pact with Mesmer to overthrow, kind of take over the proper lands between, or it's
yeah in the broad stroke, we kill the non-believers. If I become God and they don't want to worship me, then we just wipe them out is kind of the vibe I'm getting.
Right. And we do see at least a little bit of this world that is, I suppose, this seems to be the main overworld where the game takes place. It opens up into this place that looks kind of like a mix between the Altus Plateau and
Limgrave.
I have forgotten the name of Limgrave so many times on this podcast.
What's so weird is I've read like the lore and stuff, probably the least for this game, like compared to like Dark Souls games and like understanding the areas. I just remember all this shit for some reason. I guess it's just good naming conventions until it's not, and it's confusing as hell.
Right. So we get this kind of big grassy and cliffside-y overworld type of place that looks like I said, kind of a mix between Altus Plateau and Limgrave. And there's this site of grace, the same type of thing you saw in the first gameplay reveal that has this sort of rune arc sigil type deal emanating from it. And these graves everywhere.
We keep seeing this area in all the trailers, I think. It's sort of probably the Limgrave of the DLC, where we're going to kind of start and begin exploring from this main path. Actually, now that you say that, I was so caught up looking at Miquella's, what I'm calling Miquella's Grace. It seems to have a rune shape that's like a cross with a crucifix, almost a cross with a crescent. And I was like so caught up in the religious imagery of that I didn't even consider it being part of like the Elden Ring shape.
Right, yeah.
So now that kind of makes me wonder if this is like the form of Miquella's power through this specific arc, through symbolism and shapes.
It is her power through symbolism and shapes, sometimes colors.
That's fucking Christianity, like straight up. So like that seems to be what's kind of indicated here in like a double meaning type of way. That's really crazy to me. I did not even think about that.
Yeah, so we see that. We flash over to another area, kind of a swampy type of area, which looks cool, but doesn't really tell us a whole lot. There's some kind of mossy, overgrown ruins that I'm going to assume we will enter, and I'm going to assume we may or may not kill some things in there. Big story implications there.
Legacy dungeon
happening there. And then we jump over to this just very orange, very Michael Bay shooting at the golden hour tinted shot of Miquella, just very out of focus next to a site of grace. And it's just going kind of down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, so the dialogue we get from Miquella is
And so kindly Miquella would abandon everything. His golden flesh, his blinding strength, even his fate.
So this kind of harkens to Ronnie trying to change her fate and everything with what is suggested about being an Empyrean and what is required of Empyreans and sort of being the steward of some greater outer being that has untold plans for the state of the world. Yeah, this shot of Miquella falling and it's all purple tinted is heavily indicative of the Saint Trina trope we find throughout the game. Definitely how Miquella is depicted in certain ways. Sort of the veil going over the face too seems to, I don't know. Yeah, it seems to be a veil instead of hair. It's very Bloodborne-esque too.
Yeah, and just the composition and the like texture of the image, it looks a whole lot like a kind of Renaissance Catholic painting. It looks like the art style of Blasphemous, the game.
Yeah.
Played that actually, but just falling into this abyss with the only light being these kind of purple beams.
The color scheme here is kind of like with the red blood being indicative of blasphemy. This is definitely indicative of sleep and slumber and dreaming that seems to tie in with all the weapons and abilities. I think we get some craftable pots that have like the purple effect that creates slumber and will cause enemies to sleep. Saint Trina's sword would be the main one to think of there. And then we get the next scene is we see a hand of an armored fellow brushing against the dirt, and it's sort of trailing the gold grace path. I think that's kind of what it's indicating, the path we usually see in the game from the graces.
Yes, yeah.
And then it shows Miquella's rune grace again in that spot in the ground. We get kind of a shot of this really cool, I think it's the city in question, and maybe the city that was destroyed.
Yeah, it looks very much like that. It still sits at the base of that dark Erdtree. And at this point, you can see the veil draping down from that central Erdtree out over all of the other lands here.
That is a good point. I was going to say we see 7 figures here at Miquella's Grace. It's very cool. It's very Jesus-y. It kind of leads me back to Miquella being a Jesus character in this story, because we have the 7 disciples who were visited by Jesus after Jesus's death, which ties into Miquella being supposedly bodiless at this point, and maybe just some sort of spirit, or maybe just appearing through like the power of a rune. But all these characters have some cool, unique styles that we haven't seen quite yet. We've got like a holy DS2 knight.
Yeah.
Yeah, the white cloak really puts that off for me. And then a big hat Logan.
Yeah, I was going to say, Big Hat Logan has a big hat, and it is a dope hat.
It could be a larger hat, but it's got like it's got kind of like an Eastern cloak vibe to it too. And like the hand guards and stuff.
Yes. Yeah. It almost looks like Raiden's hat from Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. The one character in the middle, like we can't really see what's going on there.
But he looks like he has that kind of weird elongated neck type of helmet on, which those designs are always so goofy and I love them.
Yeah, it's got the weird head thing.
Yeah.
The FromSoft weird fucking head trope. And like kind of tattered old armor. And then we see the other guy that we've seen in the other trailers with the mask that kind of looks like Tanith, the ponytail. It's kind of got some gold and bronze vibes going on. I really like that armor, especially with like the bear cape.
Yes, I do too.
We see another gold masked character sort of like giving that Tanith vibe as well. With the white cloak, maybe like a perfumer type of character. I'm also getting that. This other one, it straight up looks like an alien head.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to ask you what you make of that guy, because, yeah, it straight up looks like the stereotypical E.T. Gray's head.
Well, yeah, I thought that, like, I was like, are they doing the albinuric helmet in this scene?
Ah, could be.
It seems to be more like human shaped. So maybe there's like a different version of the albinurics or silver people that are only in this region, only in this area of the map.
Yeah, just a different strain of them.
Oh, yeah, he has like human looking hands.
Yeah.
He doesn't have silver hands, so it's hard to tell if it does look sort of like a mask, a helmet. I can't tell if it has a nose. It almost looks like it does. And the other one just looks like a golem.
I was gonna say that's our Havel, just without the Havel head.
Yeah, but it reminds me of the big golems that you fight around the map that you knock them down and hit them while they're down. But it's got the same like helmet shape and shoulder pads, and yeah, it's definitely Havel armor for sure.
Big chunky armor boy.
We get the most hyper armor.
And then that's really it. But this shot in particular, what it reminds me of is and this is not necessarily lore, but just in terms of the structure, is a Breath of the Wild gathering the heroes to go fight the big bad type of thing, which is actually, FromSoft has kind of fainted in that direction before a couple times. The Radon Festival was sort of a little bit of that to an extent, and then there was was it the Ivory King in Dark Souls 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, where you had to go kind of collect the knights that would come in and help you out to an extent in the fight. But this seems to be like, I wonder how active all of these different characters are going to be in the story and in the combat, because this sure looks like getting the whole squad together to go try and fuck up a Mesmer.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering. I think they'll be like sort of Radon Festival type characters where they have some sort of placement in the lore and they are tarnished, but they are past tarnished who have attempted what we're doing. Or that would be great if we had another fun party battle like Radon.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they'll definitely have some appearances. And it's very likely that any of them are actual NPCs because we've seen the one guy actually in game. So we know he's not like a spirit. So, yeah, it could be very much that we interact with them at some point.
Yeah, and that's what's getting me, because generally when you do have these other people helping you out, it's as a spirit. Like, you very rarely will get an actual corporeal human or entity, whatever it may be, helping you out. What, like Dark Souls 3 fighting Yorm with Onion Man there aren't that many situations where you get an actual like person that is existing in the world at the same time as you helping you out, and which is what it seems to be hinting towards for me. And maybe I'm just reading something that isn't really there, but
do we ever see Lionel in the flesh?
I don't know.
He helps you at Dawn Festival, and then you could fight him at Godwin's Corpse versus the Hug Lady.
Fia,
yes, Fia, the Hug Lady. I don't think we ever see him as like a true physical NPC.
No. But yeah, seems like we are going to squad up with the boys and try to honor Miquella by going and fucking up a Mesmer. Maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I think it could be just like suggesting the multiplayer aspect of the game too, that's been, heavily played on and suggested, just with like the structure of the game too. They definitely want to encourage that more than they have in any other Souls game ever. It could be a double meaning is the way I'm taking it.
Right, yeah.
And then we are asked if we will walk with Miquella, and that's pretty much it. We get the title card and then the release date of June 21st, 2024.
Exactly 1 month from the date we're recording this.
Yeah, I'm thinking that we're gonna get some big reveals about how the Lands Between actually work, kind of where some of the dark spots in the lore actually fit in, and the true nature of things, I think, is what we're looking for here, the truth.
One other thought I had that didn't really fit in anywhere else, but Miquella seems to be presented as one of, if not the first, unambiguously good and heroic figures in any of these games. Even when you get these people that have done heroic things, typically in these games, you're coming at them or interacting with them way after their legacy has faded and they have turned to shit. Even if they went into it with good intentions, they have become a thing that they were trying to destroy originally. And it seems like from everything they're presenting, Miquella is maybe the first character I can remember FromSoft ever doing where that never seemed to happen.
I don't know, like, because we get the weird suggestions in that gameplay trailer that Miquella is so charismatic and can change the hearts of men to follow him. I don't know. I think that it is possibly true that Miquella is sort of our Elden Ring Jesus. Seems to offer a way out for possibly humanity and Empyreans. And that betrayal at the beginning is kind of what makes me think that Miquella found something out. There was some revelation about the nature of things and Miquella's role. If that is the hair that was taken, perhaps their state of like becoming the next envoy to the gods or whatever was actually supplanted by Marika. So I'm interested to see if there's any twists in all this. I think Miquella could pull a Griffith too.
Yeah, and they never really leave anything completely unambiguous, and it's not like they have uncomplicated characters that are just these straight heroic figures, which is why it kind of stood out to me that so far Miquella is kind of trending in that direction, although like you said, I'd kind of forgotten about some of those illusions in the first gameplay trailer, and I'm sure there will be some kind of darker or at least more complicated character motivations that end up coming out.
I have a feeling it'll be like, well, blasphemy is actually good. Haven't you considered that?
I mean, have you tried? Have you considered a blasphemy? Like just one blasphemy? Look at Rykard. I mean, so Rykard's boss arena is just the most fucking metal thing that may have ever existed, possibly that could ever exist. And you're not a little curious about trying a blasphemy?
Yeah, no. And they're like, hey, join us. It's really cool here. We've got a club and a mansion on a mountain. How badass is that?
We have a whole manor. We have an adorable snake lady. So yeah, that is the Shadow of the Erdtree story trailer. Any kind of final wrap-up thoughts? I think we started to approach something resembling some theories. I don't know if we quite got there, but we started. We started in that direction.
I will just say I didn't watch any content creators before watching this trailer and trying to come up with like some conclusions of my own. I do hope that there's some sort of twist with, if there's anything close to like America betrayal, supplanting the lineage of things, like the next in line or something like that, then I will be happy. I'll feel like I was on to something, but
you heard it here first.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, if someone else lands on that, then like, hell yeah, that's cool. But I try not to like get too much outside opinions and takes before running all this off.
Exactly. Yeah. And I did the same, and it probably shows from listening to me because I'm pretty rusty on my Elden Ring lore, but I'll likely do the same thing. I'm probably going to go kind of not full media blackout on the game. I don't have that kind of self-control if they put out another trailer or whatever, but I'm going to try to avoid any of that deep lore speculation until I have it in my hands and I can get real confused myself.
Let's live react the Vadi video now.
All right, so
cue it up.
So he's starting out by saying, oh my God, I think he's just verbatim reciting all your theories.
Oh shit, he got it. Let's see what happens. I'm looking forward to June. Maybe we'll call it here and we'll try to get this rolling.
Think we will. So thanks again for listening to this special episode of Bastard Sword. If you enjoyed this, likes, reacts, whatever, shares, those things, podcast stuff.
Like, comment, subscribe, fucking send us a message. Tell us we suck. Do whatever you can. No, and seriously, if you do enjoy this, let us know and we'll try to get to it. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm out.
Bye.